Welcome to another exciting episode of the Luminary Panel, the entrepreneurial podcast where we fuel minds with insights and inspirations. My name is Liliana Fidoa, and today we have a truly transformative conversation lined up for you. Joining us is our insightful host, Chauncey Jennings, who will be speaking with the remarkable Keri Laine. Keri is the founder of Keri Laine Executive Solutions, a firm dedicated to transforming businesses, leaders, and entrepreneurs. In this episode, Chauncey and Keri dive deeper into the essentials of starting and running a successful business. Get ready to gain valuable insights and actionable advice from two experts who have navigated the entrepreneurial landscape with great success. Shout out to one of our sponsors, Zico Space and Clubhouse. As you guys know, we did the Luminary Panel Season 1 on Zoom, and so we were looking for a podcast studio to film. And now here I am in Zico Space and Clubhouse, and here they have multiple rooms, one being the lounge, a conference room, and a podcast studio. They serve many different beverages, including tea, coffee, and kava, and their main mission is to be a place where people can come together and work together. So if you can, stop by. It's right outside of downtown Orlando, and it's a great place to work and meet others. Hope you try it.
So for the people that don't know, this is Keri Laine. We actually made an introduction via online. LinkedIn is my best friend. And I met some incredible people, including Keri.
Yes.
So please allow the audience to get to know you and what you do, and let's go from there.
All right. So Keri Laine Executive Solutions is a firm that works transforming businesses, leaders, and entrepreneurs. We focus on small to mid-market size companies that are looking to grow to scale, leaders that are growing into that next level in their career, or teams that are growing in their next need for alignment, whatever that may look like, depending on what's going on in their company and organization. Yeah. We work with investors on the VC side and the private equity side with their portfolio companies because their teams need the same. And so that is our way of being able to have a strategy that creates greater impact. If we can do it at a multiple, and we can do it with a private equity firm, we are able to reach more companies and more leaders that way. So that's our strategy, yeah.
At what point in your life made you decide to go that route?
So I was raised in HR, and my dad and a couple of other mentors gave me the advice that you need to get to know the operations so that you're not just another HR type person. And I don't have, too much in my background as far as operations or finance, but I made it a point to learn the businesses that I worked in. And when I was able to start connecting the operations, finance, and talent, realize that there's a lever there that is often underlooked and undervalued. So people, when they buy businesses or look to gain investment, they focus so much on the dollar cents, which is important, but then also the operations and how the operations works and how efficient it is. But they fail to realize that it's the human capital that powers both of those. And so once I brought 3 companies public through this process and through that experience, I started to see that it's not what people don't talk about people at the deal table. And to me, it was a huge miss. And so when we went out on our own, or when I went out on my own, I brought some of the people I've worked for with me, so it's a we thing. But when I went out on my own, we set out a mission to change the way investors view investing and the way entrepreneurs view people and talent, and wanted to teach them and educate them how to leverage up or leverage down the value and the worth of their company based on people being first, not heard of, right? Or not talked about. So
what is, so I've never heard that term, leverage up. Obviously you hear leverage up, you scale up. Yeah. But leveraging down, how important is that to a company's dynamic?
It's a great question. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're looking for some kind of partner, channel partners, any kind of relationships that are going to work with you, you want to be able to talk about the value of your company, not just in the dollars and cents piece. What you can do if you have a really strong stance is work with your story in a way that leverages up or leverages down what that dollar figure may be, or what that worth may be. And so if you're presenting greater value, they're going to leverage up their investment in you, or their commitment to you, or their interest in you. Now, if you miss talking about people, you are missing a very key component and a key opportunity to leverage up. So then you're leveraged down. So they're not going to see the true full value and worth if you don't know how to articulate it that way, and you don't know how to communicate the power of your team and what your team can actually do. There's a lot of people that say, they look at the ROI and things that happen in business, but what they fail to realize is that people when you look at every component of talent management from inception, so if you think about pre-hire all the way to retirement, everything that we do has an ROI, or it is a cost drain. And when you put dollars and cents to the work and how people work, and even conflict, there's a cost opportunity there that is something you can speak about, which would enable your conversations to be leveraged up or leveraged down based on that, the people. Yeah.
Right. So what's funny is I think people misunderstand communication, because communication, like you said, is the story about who you are as a company and as a person.
Yep.
So how strategic does communication come into play when you're talking to these investors, when you're talking to these VCs, when you're talking to the M&A businesses? Like, how important is it to make sure you have your ducks in a row when you're going to present these people?
100,000%. It's something that I call executive presence and poise. And so your entire essence, who you are, the presence you bring, the energy you have, and the way you convey that is extremely important.
Yeah.
I've had people that are incredibly talented that have lost opportunities for investment or lost opportunities to get promoted into like a C-level role in an entrepreneurial company because they didn't have it. Well, what is it? And when you look into it and you define it, it's the ability to communicate, the ability to engage, the ability to listen, and the ability to convey what's in here. And when we do our executive coaching, we have a theory that we believe the order in which people learn and people are most impactful is to look at self first, and then others, and then impact.
Wow.
And so when we work on them aligning themselves with their true self, they then can make an impact on the team that they have, and then that team collectively can make a greater impact on the world or the community or the business, that their customers and things like that. And I think that those that are really aligned with who they are better communicators, and they're able to bring that part out of them and have that essence a little bit more.
Right. And that's a very key point that you said about self-awareness, because that's something I had to do as far as building something like this. A lot of people are like, how are you going to make money from this? How are you going to do this and that? I'm like, I got to align with my vision first.
Yes.
My vision is important, so big that it'll work out for itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as I'm doing the work in between, right?
And if you really believe in it, you don't have to know every next step. You just know that you're going to find your way somehow, right? And it's something that's in you. It lives in you.
Yeah.
And when that is alive, what you do every day is very different than when you are pushing against life.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
So a lot of times people, they either live out of their ego, not their most aligned self, or they live out of other people's expectations of them, or they live out of unhealed wounds from prior family issues, culture issues, whatever it may be, from life that they're carrying with them still. And so when you have that kind of a dynamic, you're either in self-preservation mode constantly, or you're in self-proving mode, which is I'm going to prove to people I can do it.
Yeah.
The decisions that you make about what you do and how you treat people are based out of that ego spot, and you lose the ability to truly see your own vision. And it sort of dilutes and distracts the purpose of life that you ultimately will have. So you start happening to life. You start making life happen. And a lot of people think that's power, and they think that that's something to be proud of. Like, I can make this decision, or I can get that job, or I can make that salary, whatever their thing is. And ultimately, what's amazing when you let all that go, and when you're living out of authenticity, life happens for you. You don't have to happen to life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
To say you're open to receive.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than give.
Yep.
And you're going against the resistance.
Absolutely. Yep.
Rather than receiving.
And that self-alignment, people often they overextend their energy into that preservation piece, and they lose something. They lose looking for serendipity. We call it woo on our team, but the signs out there that show you you're on the right path. Have you ever had deja vu?
Yes, every day.
Okay, so there's a theory that when you're truly aligned,
Yeah.
when you have deja vu, that's actually your life laying on your life's blueprint, telling you you're doing the right thing at the right place at the right time. Keep going.
Wow.
And so I think that those things are when you have that self-alignment, you start to see them, but you're open to receive it, and you're living at a higher frequency and a greater awareness, a greater perspective in a way. So you can receive and feel those things, and that intuition is a lot stronger. So.
Right. Wow. So based off of this, your explanation of everything, it seemed like you had a lot of digging to do.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of fixing, a lot of wound patches, all of it.
Yeah.
Could we get a little deeper into your journey
Sure.
and how you became this mogul
Yeah.
in the business world?
Yeah. Where do you want me to start?
However,
Okay.
whatever you feel, let
Ooh.
it, intuition, like we said earlier.
Ooh, intuition. Yes. Okay. So I, let me.
At the Luminary Panel, our mission is to become an immediate resource to you as the aspiring entrepreneur. With that being said, we've partnered with SCG Shama Consultant Group, the business development one-stop shop. They have everything you need as far as marketing, benchmarking, and so much more, so that we, as the Luminary Panel and SCG, can help you thrive in your business.
So I'm going to start by saying this. There is a point in every person's life. Before 5 years old, we live in a subconscious state. Something has happened to every single one of us that was a Maslow's hierarchy, safety, security incident. Because we live in a subconscious state, we're in a very ego-driven place. So you are in your home, your parents are about you, you are getting fed, you are getting taken care of, you are getting put to bed, you're not doing much independently.
Yeah.
Your brain develops to a state of consciousness between 5 and 7-ish. And that's where the ability to realize there's a bigger world out there. There's friends, there's maybe school, daycare, kindergarten, a nanny. You just start to see that there's bigger life. And that's where self-esteem starts to develop.
Wow.
That translates into self-confidence around the age of 13, 14, and it continues to grow into your early 20s.
Yeah.
Whatever happened under 5, if you think about your mind like a computer and you have these files on your desktop, whatever happened got filed away somewhere, so deep, so buried, because it was in that subconscious state. You told yourself something in that moment, and all of us have had one. And I love asking people this question and challenge them to and encourage them to find out what that moment was for them, because that's the root of what you tell yourself the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That governs your decisions, and that can work for you and equally is against you.
Yep.
So with that background, I'll start with my story.
Okay.
I was 3. I'm not going to go all the way from 3 to however old I am, 22. But my parents were getting divorced, but my brother and I, it wasn't an ugly divorce or anything, but we were on the back patio reading an ABC book. And I remember he had his hands over my ears, and it was getting dark, and I'm like, why are we under a table? And why are your sticky, dirty hands on my ears? And I'm hungry and I want to go to bed. Like, what's happening? I just knew something was off.
Yeah.
Turned around and looked in the mirror, in the window where my parents were, and I saw them arguing. It wasn't anything crazy. I just knew that they were in the middle of something.
Yeah.
The loop, what I told myself was, if they loved me enough, they'd put me to bed. And so my life's theme became, am I enough? And so through those phases of working into that self-esteem, I had very low self-esteem.
Wow.
I was very introverted.
Wow.
I was afraid of a lot. I was afraid, for example, like I would get left on the side of the road by a bus driver if I went on a field trip. So I made my mom drive me the route so I could memorize it before every field trip where I wouldn't go.
Wow.
And I look back on these stories and I ache for that little girl that I was, but I also was one that just naturally through, it's nature versus nurture, but the natural part of who I am, I was always pushing boundaries. I was always testing. I was always, trying to be super independent. And so I look back and I see the struggle of this person that had so much in her, but was sheltered and covered by this theme of I'm not enough and I'm not going to be loved enough.
Wow.
Bring all that forward to middle school. I was not somebody that really had a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of extracurricular activities. I just didn't engage much.
Yeah.
And that eventually led to being around 16. I dropped out of high school. And I did that because I didn't feel like I fit in, and I didn't feel like I had my place or could find my way. And I wanted to work, and I wanted to find a way to go help contribute to the household. We didn't, necessarily have a lot growing up. So I thought that would be a way that I could find my fit.
Yeah.
That was also my first entrepreneurial decision.
Wow.
It was very upstream, meaning society doesn't allow people to just go do that. And my mom said to me, know your plan. She supported me, which she could have said 1,000 other things, but she said, know your plan. And I had to come up with a plan on how to still get an alternative high school diploma and work my way through telling my teachers, I had to go. She made me go be the one to tell the school. She was with me, of course, but I think she wanted me to face what that felt like. And those are lessons that I carry forward into what I do today in my work, that courage and that just absolute lack of fear of failure or what people think.
Yeah.
So you can see how these stories start to interlace. And I know if I'm rambling on too much, you stop me if you just want to.
I'm listening.
You want to jump in.
I'm listening.
So I started working, and I was never going to go to college. It wasn't necessarily for me. And then something shifted. I ended up going to college. I ended up actually leading the student leadership retreats for all the student, all the SGA and all the student clubs, all the presidents and their cabinets, so to speak. And I ended up leading the Phi Theta Kappa International Honor Society.
Wow.
So I went from a high school dropout to a straight A student that was suddenly super involved.
Yeah.
And I think what that theme of enough, I think that was the phase where I started trying to prove that I was to myself and to others. And what I learned, instead of kind of sheltering and hiding away, I overdid and I overexceeded at everything. And so it was like the pendulum swung.
Yeah.
And then I realized truly how powerful I could be if I put my mind to something.
Yeah.
And then it was game over. Like it was like I was limitless. I felt like everything I strived to achieve, I was able to accomplish. And so I went through my career successful early on, rose the ranks pretty quickly. And then even in going into my own and starting my own company, it was one of those, I did it 5 years earlier than I planned, which is a whole separate story why. But I think that when I realized my loop, to your point, I was healing a lot. I was going through a divorce. My kids were very, very young. My dad was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I was bringing a company public in the middle of all this. My stepdad had died. My grandfather had died. There was a lot happening in that 2-year period. Yeah. And I remember saying to myself, I have to figure out how to stay. The two most important priorities for me at that time were my kids and work. And I had to stay functional and able to perform. Yeah. Both as a mom and in the C-suite. And I had to figure out my demons. I had to figure out what drove me. I had to figure out what hurt me. I had to figure out what triggers I had, because I knew that I was on an absolute thin line. And if I didn't know what they were, anything could set me off in a I could have absolutely lost my mind. I had every right and every reason carrying all of that at the same time, where it was like a ticking time bomb. Like I didn't know if I would fall apart. I didn't know if I would, it could have gone a lot of different ways. But I said to myself, I need to know about me so that I can show up for them.
Wow.
And that's when this loop concept and this whole subconscious concept, and I took me quite some time to figure out, I'm talking months, to figure out what my loop was. And when it hit me, it was like, is that a stoplight? And I'll never forget, I felt like I got rear-ended. Like I was like, because I remembered it so clearly, because your subconscious doesn't know time. It doesn't know if that's today or yesterday. And so when that folder opened up and I saw it and I felt like I was that 5-year-old girl again.
Wow.
And that allowed me to identify it, process it, and refile it. So it's not as much of a trigger anymore, but I saw how everything in my life was based on, I am trying to decide if I am enough. I am afraid I am not going to be enough, or I'm going to damn well prove to everybody
that you are,
that I am. And so
I want to stop you right there, because I think thank you so much for opening up, by the way.
Yeah.
But I want to know, in between when you're in college and you exceeded your own expectations after dropping out of high school, not expecting yourself to do that, but you end up proving everybody wrong. At what point was the moment where you found bliss and peace and happiness that you were on that road and you figured it out?
I don't know that I've ever really arrived there. I think we're constantly always evolving and growing. And I think everything that happens in our life, whether we call it manifesting or whether we bring it into our life, whether we allow it into our life, whether we go after it and chase it and capture it to put it in our life, whatever it may be, I think that every time that you do that, you either fail or succeed, and that shapes you. And then you're ready for whatever's next.
Yeah. And
life keeps bringing, or you keep pursuing. And when those dynamics are happening, the more experience we have, the more wisdom we get, the more mature we get, the more evolved we get. I think we're always looking, I don't want to say chasing the bliss, but I think people like us that are, especially in the entrepreneurial world, I don't know that you ever really feel
It's
settled.
always winning.
Yeah. You're like, you're constantly like, what's next? And then
Yeah.
what more can I do?
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with one of my colleagues yesterday, and I'm like, okay, so we have these 3 options. We're going to do them all. And they're used to that by now, right?
Yeah.
But point being, I don't fear or worry what if it won't work. It's more a matter of, I would be bored if we didn't have this kind of a mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that bliss or arrival ever really occurs.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can ask it in this way.
Yeah. Okay.
When do you feel like you are attached to the purpose you're here for?
I think when opportunities or setbacks happen and I know exactly where I'm headed, and it's almost like when you have a budget or a grocery list.
Yeah.
If it's not in the grocery list, it just doesn't go in the basket.
Mm.
And if it is, it just does, right?
Yeah.
And so as decisions come my way, sometimes it can be confusing. They could be great opportunities. They could be amazing, wonderful clients.
Yeah.
But if they don't serve that bigger purpose, and or if you have a setback and you think, well, wait a minute, wasn't this my path? And you have to reconcile and process a setback. Those are the points when I know after the decision is made, I look back and I think, okay, I'm still living it. I'm still living it. It still matters to me. It's still on that list, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What's funny is I'm glad you brought that point up as well, because every month we do a workshop called Luminary Blueprint, and we're in the month of May. For the people watching,
yeah.
we're in the month of May, and this event's topic is about partnerships matter.
Okay. Yes.
And most of our conversation is probably going to be on, if it doesn't align, don't partner.
Yep.
How hard has it been for you, or how easy is it for you to find the people that aligns with your purpose and your vision and your mission in the company for you guys to work together?
I think the interesting part is when you're that committed to it. Number one, I think life brings you more people that are of alignment, right? So they sort of end up in your sphere in a very interesting way. But I also think that it brings you more significant challenges to test you and see how real you are about that. And so I have worked with hundreds of CEOs through the executive coaching piece, and even the companies that I have been in, some of the people have been some of the most difficult people ever.
Yeah.
But I have a choice. I can quit. I can try to change them.
Yeah.
Or I can figure out how to support the team and the company around them. And that's the option I took, right? Because I'm not going to focus on them. It's too draining. It's negative energy. It's not worth it. I'm instead going to build what I know needs to be built. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that there's times where I've had to and was the only one standing up for what was right. And I was never afraid to do that. And so, for example, one of the companies, the founders didn't believe in HR. This was early on in my career. They didn't believe in HR. And I knew that if they only thought HR was payroll and benefits, I was going to, it's not the company for me, because I knew it could be so much more.
Yeah.
And I went to the CEO who I'd never talked to before. And I gave him a presentation. It was a gap analysis of the function, and it was all these things that we could do. We were only operating at like 30% of what we could have been doing. And then I listed the barriers. And out of the very last barrier, it was him. And I said, it's you. And if you cannot come along this vision, then that's it. But I was so early in my career, where did I get in my head that it was okay to tell the founder, you are in my way. I need you to sit down and support me, or I can't, this isn't going to work for either of us, and that's okay. And I remember my mom that morning asked me, she said, you're probably going to get fired when you do this, right? And that was one of those decision moments where I said, yeah, and I'm okay with that if that happens. I'm okay with that, because I need to stand up for what's right, or I need to go stand up somewhere else. So I think that when you speak with conviction and you speak from that authentic place, and I call it eyes wide open, heart full. You have eyes wide open, all the facts, data, you're taking in information and you're processing it in the appropriate way. And then your heart full is, are you doing it with the right morals, ethics, the right integrity? And when you do life with those two at the forefront, that's when everything starts to kind of click and work out. And the doors open and the people are brought in, and the failures are less. The only times that I've ever really derailed or failed have been when I haven't listened to one of those two.
Wow.
And so I don't know, again, if that answers your question, but yeah.
I think a lot of people that are in the business are starting to think about doing business are, again, like we mentioned earlier, ego driven.
Yeah.
So it stops them from growing because they feel like somebody's going to take their idea, or they're going to do something that's going to be detrimental to the person that's thinking about, the collaboration.
Yeah.
At what point in your career was that an issue, or I think a better way to say it was something that made you double think about the partnership?
So we actually have a situation going on currently now. There's two different opportunities that in some cases you could say we've been working on for a while, but they also came out of nowhere at the same time. I don't know if you ever have those where, and you're like, oh my gosh, are they really happening at the same time? And which one's right? Because we can't do both. And sitting with that, one of them is significantly more lucrative. And one of them is, I wouldn't say more passion oriented, because they're both, it's actually kind of the same amount of, it's the same kind of work that we do, the leadership development and succession planning and team alignment and all that. But one continues to serve our mission of changing the way investors and leaders view people in a business. The other, we have an opportunity to change a global 30 country, multi-billion dollar organization. But if we were to go all in on that, our vision at the end is impact. And so if I spend a year or two, which is a more lucrative outcome, if I wanted my ego to be attached to that company and that brand, I would have made that decision without thinking twice. But our long-term interest is impact. And if we are head down in that kind of a project, we're losing traction on the other things that we can be doing to go change the world in our own way. You know what I mean? So I think those decisions are the ones that happen quite a bit, and the ego can really play with you in that point.
That's true. I think again, it goes back to the vision and alignment. I think as long as it aligns with your vision and your mission, which is for you is impact, it'll work out itself. Even if it's less lucrative, like you said, it just feels better. Right?
And when you're making a decision out of ego, you know what that feels like. There's like this not really, like it feels like sandpaper in there, right? And people choose to ignore that. I think people do it with titles all the time. I think they do it with the way in which they think they should be earning or what their income level should be, but by when. That's the other kicker is, what is your patience level for you to be wealthy over the course of your life, or what do you need right now today? Because if you're focused on it right now today, that's all ego. Right?
That's good.
If you're aligned with your long-term vision, it doesn't really matter when the money comes, because you know it's going to come. You're going to live a life of abundance. And you have more patience and grace with that. And you don't feel like a failure because you haven't arrived at whatever that threshold is, today or next week or whatever it may be.
So with all of the CEOs that you've worked with, what do you find the most common issue or difficulty?
Narcissism.
Let's talk about
100%.
it. Let's talk about it.
It's if you think about the pathology of a narcissist, that whole loop situation, a narcissist is formed because in that subconscious state, they have the same event, but they never move past the ego state. So they never mentally and emotionally evolve into self-esteem or into confidence, because they never stop seeing the world as everybody's in it for me. And so those are the kind of people that also are incredibly charismatic, that are they have a certain essence about them, right? They have a certain ability to initially connect with people, although you'll notice they have no deep, real relationships. They are risk takers. They are attention seeking constantly. They have to live. They have to create this life around them, which supports their false sense of self that they've projected to the world, because inside they're so wounded and they're so terrified of that subconsciously that this grandiose presence becomes this story that they have to keep up with. That's why everything they do is accelerated, or it's to the nines, or it's very out there. But that's also why they get misplaced for being very successful, and that's why a lot of the CEOs and founders are that way. They start these companies, they build these companies for accolades, for recognition, for look at me. And what's crazy is that back to the alignment, early in my career, I would take on clients, and I took on more that I turned out to be narcissist than not. And eventually I got to my alignment. I'm like, I don't want to, you can't change a narcissist unless they're willing to change themselves.
Yeah.
And so I can't be successful in that kind of an executive coaching dynamic. So I would kind of veer the other way. And that was one of those life decisions on ego. And could I have gotten more or bigger names or sure, but not the point. The amount of people that have that in them, it's their blessing and it's their curse,
Wow.
And so it's a very dangerous leader to have because they are so destructive because everything ends up back about them. Look at and dissect the issues they're having, the lack of ability to align a team, the conflict that's surrounding them that they can't seem to get through, the deal that they can't seem to get closed. When you dive deep layer by layer, you start to realize that it really comes from that basis of insecurity.
Yeah.
And that is where working with them on helping them find their loop. But then what's interesting is that people will either shut down because they are too afraid or they don't think it's meaningful enough. And the meaningful enough to me is an excuse. It's like, okay, if you don't think knowing you as your whole self is one of the most important leadership journeys that you could take, and you just want to like know you today and life today, that's not going to work, right? We show up every day as our whole selves.
Yeah.
And I used to laugh when people would say things like, keep your personal life at home. Well, we're people. We have these full big lives and these dynamics, and it's work-life integrated, especially nowadays. And you can't not show up as your whole self. And if you can, then you're probably a narcissist.
Yeah.
Or you are faking it. And so that's back to not living who you are. And so you start to see these patterns over time of that fear and that, and or they think very myopically, meaning if there is a challenge with a competing company or competition somewhere, they want to go after that person to prove that they are bigger, right? So they will want to make that person feel smaller so they feel bigger instead of asking what's best for the industry, what's best for the market, what's best for the customer. So their vision is very hyper focused on what's going to make them feel more secure. Yeah. And they lose the fact that they are probably, if they're not a narcissist, they're probably so powerful and so strong, and they're just getting in their own way all the time. So what we try to do is get them out of getting in their own way and tripping over their own feet. And there's different ways that we do that, but that's generally how we see it kind of play out.
Oh, wow. That is incredible. It goes back to what you said earlier about when your first client was in their own way. And now you're starting to see it in everybody else. So is your preparation similar, or is it like different? Obviously different because different people, but the principle is still there.
Yeah, the principles and the framework are timeless. And they're boundless, meaning if you are a junior director going to a VP level, or if you are a new founder, or if you are a C-suite person that is starting your own fund for the first time, we all revert back to that loop, that younger self, because it's something new and we've never been where we've never been before. So the methodology of extracting it and reordering it and helping them find their footing, it applies to all of the same scenarios. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's generic or cookie cutter, because it's not. Everybody's situation is different.
Absolutely.
But you start to see the framework of the thoughts, and the thoughts categorically lead to outcomes.
Yeah.
And
so good.
When you see outcomes, as I've seen time after time after time after time, leader after leader, company after company, you start to be able to reverse engineer the mental state, the emotional state, and the belief, self-worth. You start to be able to dissect all of that at a faster rate. So, yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting.
It's crazy. And I've had people where I'm like, okay, just so you know, this is going to happen this week. And they'll come back to me and they're like, how'd you know? And it's just, cause you see I've seen it before, but they're like, it's like you're psychic or something. There's a bit of intuition there, but ultimately, the human behavior and the human psychology, we overcomplicate it so much, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. You've been saying a lot. I got a lot of points I want to touch on. I know we have enough time, but let's talk about your kids.
Yes.
Now, I know you're a phenomenal mom.
Oh, thank you.
Because after our first conversation, I could just tell the mom in you, then also the killer entrepreneur in you. How, when your kids came into play, how did that change the dynamic of you working towards the long-term vision in your company? Because I know it's a lot of female entrepreneurs that's single mothers now or in a marriage with kids and don't know how to necessarily get through that hump of like, okay, I need to focus on my kid first. And then what was the dynamic like?
So I actually wasn't sure I wanted kids before I had them. I wanted my career. I lived my career.
Yeah.
I was good at it. So I wasn't really sure that I thought I was the family kind of person. And then when my first son was born, he will be 10 on Friday.
Wow.
He was born, he made me a mother on Mother's Day.
Nice.
When I met him, I was absolutely perplexed that I could love two things so intensely. Yeah. And I didn't know how to balance it. And I felt guilty if I was working. I felt guilty if I was with him. I felt strained and stressed, and meaning like I never felt like I was doing enough, back to my theme. I never felt like I was doing enough or showing up enough anymore in the way that I knew how to do on my own without or pre being a mom. Yeah. And I looked to find resources, and ironically, surprisingly, there was none out there at the time. So this was 10 years ago. And so I created this volunteer-based support group that is now, I want to say, close to 9,000 members. It's called Working Moms Work Together.
Wow.
And I started it because I needed help. And I was asking for the same kind of perspective that you're asking me. Like, how do you people do it? Is this normal? How do I peel his little fingers off of me when I drop him off at daycare and not feel like a terrible mom, but then go slay and then turn right around and pick him up and then not answer emails, right? Like that whole dynamic was really hard. I think at least what I learned through that process is it's okay to choose you. And I think we have to sacrifice everything, and you do. And I'm not saying be selfish. Yeah. But for example, my kids go to school around here, and we have a volunteer hour requirement, and I'm the one that will try to win the auction to get out of my volunteer hours. Yeah. And it's not because I don't want to be there. And actually, one of the moms asked me at one point. She was like, "Don't you feel like your kid wants to see you in the lunchroom?" Or on field trips. Wow. And I said, absolutely, yes. And so I do that when I can. But I also know that I'm teaching my kids how to be an entrepreneur, and that I will be hiring many of these children one day. And I will get lots of time in the cafeteria with them when they come work for us. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a different dynamic, a different way to look at it. And I think the guilt and the self-shaming that we do limits us from being both the best parent we can be and both the best career-oriented person that we can be. Yeah. So back to when you let it go and you just accept, if you are fiery in here to have this career and follow this passion, you are doing yourself, your career, and your child a disservice by not following it, because you're not living in that authentic way. Full way. And so giving yourself permission to embrace that is something that your child will follow. Right. And you're still a great parent, right? Yeah. And so I think that even though it's a lot to balance, and I think it's that mental load, it's more of, call it the emotional backpack. It's like we carry these backpacks through life, invisible backpacks of emotion. And we all want to get to the top of the mountain, whatever that vista is. And we take all these assumptions or other people's opinions and we put them in our backpack. Yeah. And we don't realize we're making our load heavier to make their load lighter. And I think parents, we do that a lot. We take our kids' rocks, we take their pack, we carry it for them. And then we wonder why we're so tired. Yeah. And we wonder why we're not thinking clearly. And if we're able to teach our kids what it means to work and have a sense of self and have a sense of purpose, you're allowing them to carry their backpack while you carry yours. You both have your own weight. You're not enabling and you're not hurting either. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think we do that to ourselves, where we assume that our role has to be 100% sacrificial. And I think it's just a disservice to all fronts.
I agree. I actually had this conversation, but I went to a summit not too long ago, and it gave us the opportunity to ask questions. And it was a full woman panel. And my question was, as an entrepreneurial male, and I have a 1-year-old daughter, what do I do to give her the instinct to become an entrepreneur or to become a big player as a woman in a high-end, company? And he told me that just give her things to take risk with. Yeah. Now I want to ask you, with your 2 children, is it a boy, girl?
2 boys.
Girl? 2 boys? Okay. How do you, as a mother, teach them to be entrepreneurs without just, I could say, tangibly teach them how to be
at their
entrepreneurs?
age? That's developmentally appropriate. Perfect example. You know how as a parent, especially if it's your first one. Be careful, be careful, be careful. You're going on that slide. Be careful walking
I'm
up
the
the slide.
complete opposite.
But here's what I will tell them.
Yeah.
I want to inspire risk. I want to inspire innovation. I want to inspire thinking ahead.
Yep.
So from the very, very, very early age, okay, you're going up a very steep ladder to the top of that slide. What's your plan? Know your plan.
Back to your mom.
Exactly. And if and it's okay if you want to try this, and I got your back. But if you fall, which way do you think is the safest way to fall? That side has a brick wall, so you need to try to move your body that way. Now I believe in you. You got it. Let's go. And I don't hover. And yeah, we've had some whoopsies.
Yeah.
But what I think it's done, especially for my little one, it's given him a sense of invincibility. That's sometimes kind of hard, but I see that fire in him, and he carries those times where he's fallen as almost like a superpower now. Yeah. Because he'll say, "Mom, I've healed, and I know I can do it, so I'm not scared."
Oh.
Which can be a little dangerous, but I see him like running the world one day. I don't know. You can just see it in him. But it goes back to the nature versus nurture, like what's really in you and what's really not. Not everybody's built that way. There's a certain fabric and a certain weaving of that fabric that creates the entrepreneurial mindset and spirit. Yeah. And I think it is part nature, part nurture. The other thing from the very beginning is allowance. So I've made them earn everything that I give them everything that they need, right? But whatever they want. And it started from a very, very early age. Gavin saw somebody had a switch. He wanted a switch. He was 3. Okay, $1 a chore. Just like an entrepreneur. As hard as you want to work, I will give you, if you want to earn that switch in 1 week, you can earn it in 1 week. Yeah. But it's up to you. But here's the deal. We're going to split the $1 up. We're going to have the quarter for savings, quarter for donation, quarter for whatever you want it, and then quarter for investment. And so the switch is actually going to cost you 3-4 times more for you to be able to earn it. And it took him 8 months, but that kid bought his own switch before he was 4. And so those are the moments where teaching them the value of the $1, teaching them how to earn it, when to save it, when to spend it, when to hold it, and when to invest it, I think is part of creating the entrepreneurial spirit, because they start to see that money, relationship, wealth, and impact as one. Yeah. Instead of separate, I'm just going to wait for a paycheck and then I'm just going to pay bills with it. Yeah. Right. So
it's a different mindset. So on top, including that, let me ask you this: how do you separate mom, work, and self? What is your self like relaxation? What is your self-care day? What does that look like? And how do you separate it?
So I used to never speak about my kids at work because I never wanted being a mom to be used against me as I was climbing in my career. And eventually I realized it's back to not being aligned. So I don't actually separate work and kids. In fact, one of my sons, we were going to have a together day, and I was going to bring him here because, it was like, I'm working. I want you to see me working. I trust that you'll sit in the corner quiet. But point being, I don't try so much to separate them anymore because that it's just life, right? As far as self-care is concerned, I think that it's really important. People put so much pressure on themselves to show up for other people all the time, and they don't ask, where am I showing up for me? Yeah. And so like the days that I don't have my kids and they're with their dad and I don't have to wake up and do the mom morning routine, I don't set an alarm. I sleep in as long as my body needs. Yeah. And I try not to set meetings until 10. I'm at a place where I've earned the ability to do that, right? Which is part of why I love being an entrepreneur. Yeah. However, I make that choice, and I know a lot of people that would get really restless or feel like they had to set the alarm at that 4 a.m. club. Got it. That's you. You do you. Yeah. I need sleep. Yeah. I know I'm a night owl. And so if I'm not going to get it in a 24-hour block when I'm churning and burning the midnight oil, I will catch up later in the week. And I know that I've given myself time and space to do that. So I think that there's different ways to incorporate choosing yourself and caring for yourself in the same way you would for them. If it's good enough for them for you to spend time, go out for a walk. You want your kids to eat healthy. You want them to brush their teeth and do something great with their hair in the morning and put their, nice clothes on when they go out. If it's good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for us? Wow. Right?
That's a mic drop. Are you familiar with Bradley? Mm-mm. So he started this whole company called Lightspeed. Okay. It's basically an online coaching course. But then he started Dropping Bombs, which is his podcast. He brings everybody on. Okay. But he has a soundboard. When somebody says something good, it's a dropping bomb
that's
moment.
Funny. I wish I had one. That's funny.
I have 2 questions left because I know you have to go. The first question is, what are 3 tangible takeaways that you could give our audience that can help them, inspire them to take the leap of faith into the entrepreneurship world, and they can make an impact for themselves and the people around them?
I would say find your loop.
Okay.
Because that will help you find what will drive you, what will deter you. It will also help you find what fuels your power versus what fuels your insecurities. And once you can break that down, you will be able to find your faster, clear path and be more successful when you do.
Yeah.
So that would be one. The other thing I would say is be brave even if you're not pretend to be, because no one knows the difference. And that courage, even if you have to borrow it from others, borrow it, own it as if it's your own until you have your own there. And that will help you keep one foot in front of the other. And the other thing I would say, and this sounds so cliche, but if it's really your dream, don't give up. My dad ended up passing away. And I remember asking him, thank you. I remember asking him in our last conversation if he had any regrets. And he was a workaholic, right? Like he loved what he did. And I learned a lot of my work essence from watching him and how hard he worked.
Yeah.
He said, I wish I had more time for things I don't have time for anymore. And I translated that to be more time with my brother and me.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation. And I think what he actually meant was sometimes what we think we're going after, we're missing what actually really matters. And we're missing what we could be going after. Or like you back to, it's not ego, it's just you sort of get misplaced along the way and you think you're doing, he thought he was doing the best for us by helping support through work, which allowed us to have soccer and dance.
Yeah.
And so he provided. And that was his journey of being the best. And at the end of his life, when he looked back, he wished it was more time. And you can't go back and undo that. I can't take that off his heart in his last few days of life. But one of the things that I learned from that conversation is we all have choices. And I asked myself, where do I want to be when I'm on my deathbed? And I'm having that conversation with my kids.
Wow.
What do I need or want to know now or do now where I don't have that? I don't carry that down to the grave with me. And that's why I opened my company years early, because I was like, I'm getting off the hamster wheel. I want more time to do the things I may not have time for anymore one day.
Wow.
And so I think knowing that and putting that question to yourself, when you take your last breath, what is peace going to feel like?
Yeah.
And what kind of impact do you want to have? And are you following that? And if you're not aligned in here.
Wow.
And that's something that you can't undo at that moment. So do it now while you can.
That is so good. Hopefully you guys got that, because that was a lot of good stuff. Okay, this brings us to a conclusion and my last question.
Yes.
So for the Luminary Panel, we have big goals.
Yes.
Our goal for, I would say 2026, is that we want to start doing like humongous conferences.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness, he just had a phenomenal conference. But I saw that and I saw us on the stage as well. But it's our event. We got other things in line that we want to do in the meantime.
Yeah.
So we always aspire to continue to grow. And as we bring in inspiring entrepreneurs, we want to know, for the Luminary Panel, what are some things we should do to help us get there, or what are we doing now that we need to continue to make sure that we get to that point?
I know you're doing a lot on social media and with the company and with the podcast. Are you focusing on your personal brand and your executive presence quite a bit? Okay. I think that's a big part of it. So if you're doing that, people will come for you, right?
Okay.
They'll know your company name, but people are going to come for you and they're going to come back for you.
Yeah.
So if everybody on your team is operating in that way, that they're putting their authentic selves out there, that's going to attract, at least your goal for 2026 would be what I would think. But the other thing is find the gravity ball. Find the people, the big names that have a big network, that have the same kind of mission, the same kind of alignment. Serve them before, do something for them before you ask of them to do something for you. And even if you're starting out and you don't have, the kind of budget that a massive conference would have as you get the first few rolling, you can find a way to help them somehow and then ask for them to show up and then give them tickets or give them a table or whatever it may be. And you bring those gravity balls and you automatically get an attachment to a different level, right? And then that builds upon itself. And it also builds your confidence as you work to trying to not only expand the outreach, but the level of caliber that you want to express.
Yeah.
It gets elevated through other people in that way. So it's power and influence.
That's true. Thank you so much for that. Where can they find you?
At Keri Laine social
Okay.
is most of my social handles. On LinkedIn. My website is Keri. We just changed it because we did a rebrand. So it's kles.pro
Okay.
for the company, and Keri Laine for my own personal brand stuff. And yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for being vulnerable on the platform and being the second woman in charge for the Luminary Panel. Thank you guys for watching. This has been an incredible conversation with Keri. I look forward to having multiple conversations with her later on in our path. Again, make sure you follow us on all platforms. Shout out to our sponsors, EcoSpace and the SCG team. Peace out.
And that wraps up another enlightening episode of the Luminary Panel. We hope you found the conversation between Chauncey Jennings and Keri Laine as inspiring and insightful as we did. Their experiences and wisdom on starting and running a successful business, along with choosing the right opportunities, offers invaluable lessons for entrepreneurs at all stages. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review and share it with anyone who could benefit. Also, make sure to follow us on all of our socials at the Luminary Panel. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community. We'll see you next time on the Luminary Panel.